Welcome to 13 British Artists Children Should Know. And today, we're finally having actual genders. Let's get this started with mixed gender, yay! Alright, our first artist is Mary Beale. Here we go. Taboo is red, so we will use yellow. Mary Beale. Now, Mary Beale was actually pretty wealthy and commissioned the wealthy and the most important actually went ahead and commissioned her to paint their portraits. And now what she did, like how she draw them, was actually how she remembered them. That's how we remember her. And them too. There are a bunch of portraits that she's ever drawn in her life, and in fact, people like to wear their best outfits whenever they get these portraits, so we practically know the fashion sense because of her portraits too. This is called the artist's husband, Charles Beale. Well, she, of course, obviously, would draw her husband as well. Who wouldn't? Anyway, Charles Beale went ahead, was in this one. And then, there's not much more to really be said, too. Back then, lots of women weren't really great, well, at least weren't told to go ahead and get careers. In fact, a woman having a career in art, as well as having a successful one, was highly unusual for the time as well. Alright, next up, we have William Blake. Now, William Blake, when this was first created about 200 years ago, people called it his artwork a little different, and nowadays we see it as pretty modern. But lots of people, when they see the artwork, don't realize that it's actually created from 200 years ago. In fact, people seem to think that this was painted a few years ago. In fact, it was painted years ago, but 200 years is more or less the more exact difference as well here too. Speaking of which, this is called Newton, and people actually kind of criticize it, saying that, why did you draw extra muscles? There are no muscles here. There are no muscles here. This makes no sense. But that's actually kind of what I like about it too. Newton himself liked drawing things. He actually liked going ahead and making pictures and making out mathematics. And with that, he can go ahead and create a pretty big career too. Also, I really think the muscles make it look weirder than it should be. Alright, next up we have JMW Turner. JMW Turner. Now, we've actually seen this guy's painting once. This one, too. Oh, sorry. This one. This one, though, it's called Snowstorm. The Snowstorm, this is basically it's actually called the steamboat off a harbor's mouth, making signals in shallow water and going by the lead. 1842. What a extremely long title. In fact, this is actually pretty much what a snowstorm would look like in the eyes of a person. Mainly, however, why he kind of drew like this is because his eyesight started getting poorer. Even worse eyesight than this 2D triangles. But then again, he also created great paintings too. Being an artist originally was a job that you learned as an artist, but then school started happening, and you can learn art for school too. It was common for artists to learn their craft in the 18th century in academies or art schools. And JMW Turner himself went to the Royal Academy schools in London, and he exhibited his first watercolor painting a year later in 1790, and then he also began working on oil paintings as well. This one is the one we saw before. It's called Rain, Steam, and Speed, the Great Western Railway in 1844, and children often actually go ahead and start pictures by drawing a blue sky at the top of the page and green grass at the bottom, but Turner used a huge numbers of colors. Instead of just blue on the top, he made it look rainy. It actually does look like rainy too. It looks very misty if you kind of ask me. And this is one of the magic of JMW Turner too. Next up, we have John Everett Millais. John Everett Millais, it is actually often said, it is often said that every picture tells a story, but some are actually easier to read than others, and Millais' work is actually relatively easy to find the point in compared to other people's paintings. Here it's called Christ in the House of His Parents of 1849 to 1850. Well, firstly, of course, he himself actually hated the Royal Academy School, so he and a couple of his friends tried to go ahead and make a school about simpler art. Speaking of which, he went ahead and started drawing this kind of things too. It just made more sense. Not much allegory, it just literally is what it is. Here's Christ in his own house, where he goes ahead and shows what Christ seems to have lived in. And then later, the greatest achievement of John Everett Millais is actually the fact that he became the president of the Royal Academy Schools, which he hated, by the way. So that's kind of ironic. You became the president of the school that you hate. I'm pretty sure he would have had much more reforms if it wasn't for the fact that he died just a few years later. Alright, next up we have LS Lowry. LS Lowry. LS Lowry himself is actually called the creator of the Matchstick Men and Matchstick Cats and Dogs. And he never quite achieved the recognition that he had today. In fact, his recognition back then was pretty terrible. His style is instantly recognizable, and people assume that he was actually self-taught. However, in fact, though, although he was actually turned down for art school and worked through his life in a series of financial jobs, he took art lessons for many years and eventually was recognized by the art world as it was today. In fact, a few years after he died, there was an exhibition of a collection of his own artwork by the Royal Academy in London. And by the Royal Academies in London, which actually rejected him. And this actually broke the attendance records for 20th century artists. And Salford Museum and Art Gallery just began collecting his work in the 1936. And today, they house all that collection of L.S. Lowry's works in a building named after him. Lol, what a very ironic person. That's what I say. Next up, we have this artist named Henry Moore. Henry Moore. Da 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 da. Henry Moore. Henry Moore actually had a very long career. He lived a pretty long life. He lived all the way up till the age of 88. He himself went ahead and started working on sculptures. He worked on things that just made a little bit of a sense and then doesn't make sense at the same time. This is called the King and the Queen. The heads of Moore sculptures are actually often lacking the details that we'd expect. But then again, this is what we're supposed to do, to go ahead and put in the details that we'd expect to be on there too. You can see that they're looking in slightly different directions, and are they seeing the same things though? We're not sure. But do they look regal or isolated? I mean, are they talking to each other? I'd like to think that they're talking to each other. I mean, they're both the king and queen. And this is actually supposed to be a human. Here is where the head is supposed to be. Here are the arms of the buff man. And then here, it's supposed to be the legs. And this is apparently supposed to be the buttocks. And then, of course, we have this old lady. Except this isn't what she looked like when she was actually painting. This is the only photo I have available of her. Leonora Carrington. Leonora Carrington herself is a surrealist artist who actually had a treasure trove for all of us to actually go ahead and examine in further detail. And in this process, it also kind of strokes our great imagination. We are the dreamers. Da, 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 da. I forgot the lyrics, unfortunately. This is called the Giantess, also known as the Guardian of the Egg. You can always go ahead and look out for this kind of person, this kind of thing. In fact, this itself looks like a movie that's just been paused, don't you think? Like a movie scene, and then you cut out the sides, and then you pause it, and you're focusing on one thing too. Well, this is basically what the Giantess too. It's like this daydreamy kind of feel in Leonora Carrington's paintings. She ran away from Paris with the surrealist artist Max Ernst, and then she went to Spain and Mexico City, and after living in New York just a little bit while, she went back to Mexico City and settled there for the rest of her life. Her parents weren't artistic, so obviously she wasn't really that happy at home, and she thought her creativity, well, the creativity itself, comes from individuals, not from the genes they inherit. But then again, she went ahead and did all this too. She drew all these fascinating pictures. Alright, next up we have the great artist Beryl Cook. Beryl, no one actually kind of draws like Beryl Cook. People may draw something similar to like this, but, well, none of them draw it exactly like her as well. She herself makes them look very cartoony. This is called balatomans. Now, all their hands, notice their hands, are actually like giant and bloated too. A bit like the foam ones that we're going ahead and handed out whenever we're going ahead in the sports stadium to go ahead and shout for things when important events happen. It's supposed to be that. This is supposed to be an important event. Except also, I like to say that they're watching movies. And here, this woman here is selecting, using little pincer kinds of fingers to go ahead and select the kind of chocolate she wants right now. And with that, you can figure out what Beryl Cook is. So one person even said, I suspect Beryl Cook's painting will be remembered and cherished long after the most 20th century artists are forgotten. Edward Lucy Smith, and he's an art critic. Alright, next up we have these two people. These two people are special. Their names are Gilbert and George. And one of them's Italian, one of them's English. They've met each other during art school in the They met each other at art school in London on September 25th, 1967, and since then, they've went ahead and created art ever since. They together live on the East End of London. They wake up together at the same time. They both studied sculpture at the St. Martin's School of Art, London, and they're known for large-scale paintings and living sculptures. Literally, they wear the same, well, at least not the same, matching suits. One of them has to wear glasses because the other doesn't have, well, vision problems. With that, they always eat the same thing. They never interrupt each other whenever they're having conversations. And with that, they create these kinds of artworks too. That's kind of pretty fascinating, if you ask me, for two people who decided to live together intertwinedly. Sure, I'd say they're best friends, but I pretty sure think that this is a little bit too much. This is called Fair Play by Gilbert and George. Alright, next up, we have David Hockney. David Hockney himself is one of those artists that I actually kind of like. David Hockney is an internationally famous artist working in lots of different media, but whatever format he goes ahead and chooses, the response of artists, critics, and the general public alike actually goes ahead and tends to be that pretty positive. He was born in Yorkshire, and in his early age, he really did want to be an artist, and he studied at the Bradford School of Art and later at the Royal College of Art, and then he started creating these kinds of paintings too. These paintings, he's actually known to be a very good draughtsman, someone who is able to execute things pretty well, to be able to draw really well in the ways that just make sense. Your trees that lines up here too. It just looks exactly like how we would think it would look. And it would kind of be fun if you use a bicycle to travel down, wouldn't you think? You're going downhill. You're never going to need to pedal until you get to the bottom and you need to go back up. Alright, next up we have Anthony Gormley, and he offers us a figures in the landscape who actually occupy the space so completely that we stand and stare, rather than wondering why are they there. Yeah, this person here looks pretty real, and this is actually supposed to be an angel, except the wings, they're pretty too unrealistic if you ask me. So with that, we can go ahead and think weird things too. He even drew these kinds of art, made these sculptures that are on several square kilometers of sand, and when the tides rush over the sand, they themselves disappear. And every afternoon, technically night, they disappear under the water, and every morning, when the water starts dispersing again, they reappear, which is magical. He even drew all this. He even made all this, and since there's no human around for comparison, it just makes them look larger than they're actually supposed to be. This looks like a little building, doesn't it? Well, sure. Also, I immediately thought that they're pretty small. Alright, next up, we have Cornelia Parker. Cornelia Parker herself is a pretty great artist too. She went ahead and she uses everyday items and everyday subjects to go ahead and change them, and in the process she makes them in a new light. In fact, this was actually created by a French artist Rodin in the Tate Gallery for a long time, and then Cornelia Parker wrapped string around it, which made us think that they can escape, but then we realized it's a sculpture. They can't escape. She even used a guillotine to guillotine this doll. She actually used an actual guillotine. I'm not kidding here. And she also put a bomb inside of a shed after putting some useless things inside there. And then she took photos of it while it's exploding, frame by frame, which she actually shows inside this kind of exhibition too. And then she put all the things, the shed wood in the exterior and the items in the middle, to go ahead and create a shed-like thing, a shed-like artwork, which goes ahead and looks a lot like a shed, but because of the light, it goes ahead and looks terrible. It looks like explosions, and it creates great shadows too. I'm not sure what her electricity bill will be like after this, though. And finally, we have this man, the Yinka Shonibare MBE. Apparently that's his name. Shonibare MBE actually goes ahead and played with images that we already know, and then he goes ahead and makes a bunch of changes. Now in bright fabrics and 3 dimensions, we can actually go ahead and no longer assume it was all we seemed. There's way more to this too. Now he drew a bunch of things. He made a bunch of great artworks too. He made this Nelson ship in a bottle in 2010, which is now currently in the Trafalgar Square of London. And afterwards, lots and lots of things, lots and lots of changes happened. He even made this special artwork, Black Gold number 2, which goes ahead and shows us how much our love for gold, black gold, aka oil, has made us. And so, of course, with that, there's not much more we need to discuss. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. I hope to see you guys in the next one. And so until then, drown out, peace. Bye-bye. Bum 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 ba bum bum ba bum 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 ba bum bum ba bum. Bum 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 ba bum bum ba bum.